Hello students, in this video lecture we are going to discuss about the inter-process communication or shortly IPC. So before going into the IPC and the methods of IPC, we have to first recall the basic concepts that lead to the need of IPC. Why inter-process communication is required. The first concept that leads to the IPC implementation is a process. So because we are treating every program as a process, and if the operating system is managing multiple processes, there is a need for them to interact through IPC. So the first cause of the inter-process communication is the advent of the implementation of the process concept. Secondly, you are aware that multi-programming is a way by which we make the CPU to run many programs or many processes at a time with the help of interleaving. So through interleaving, the OS is switching the CPU from among a number of processes. The third concept is the context. So because there is process context, even if the process is temporarily halted, its execution is stopped, it can still be resumed safely after some point of time with the help of the context. So every detail that is pertaining to the current process are all stored into the context. So if the process is needs to be resumed later, the PCP or the process context will facilitate that. The next is context switching. So context switching is the technique employed by which the CPU change the processes that it is currently executing, and context switching will be typically invoked whenever the current process has to either wait for some event to complete, or it has completed its time quantum, or it has been identified to make some illegal request. So in such cases, immediately the CPU will switch from the current process to a new process. The one that makes this context switching, that is the one that provides the next process to the CPU, is called as the short-term scheduler. So short-term scheduler is the module of the OS which is responsible for selecting the next process to be executed by the CPU. For that, it will employ some CPU scheduling algorithm, and based on which it will keep selecting the processes. And we can also use the term dispatcher to refer to the same model which is in charge for CPU scheduling. And the next concept is concurrent processes. So concurrent processes means that all the processes that simultaneously exist in the memory. So at any point of time, the memory houses a number of processes, and execution may happen in any order. So once the processes are all loaded into the main memory, it's a matter of time when they get their turn, and when they complete their time quantum and wait for the next turn. So it will be like the CPU will be keep rotating or switching among all the processes, and all those processes which are currently sharing the CPU and the memory at this point of time, at a given point of time, are termed as concurrent processes. They are like passengers who are traveling in a train at a particular point of time. They are co-passengers, and here they are concurrent processes. Now the need of inter-process communication. We have seen that there are a lot of reasons for executing number of processes at a time simultaneously. By switching, the CPU is going to be executing many processes at a time. So once you agree that many processes can be executing, then they are either under the category of independent processes or they are cooperating processes. The difference between the two is that independent processes are like processes which are just coexisting at a given point of time. There is no connection or relationship between them. They just happen to be in the memory simultaneously. It's very similar to the example of passengers in a train or a flight. They just come together for the journey, and they may not have anything to talk to the next person. They may not have anything to exchange with the other people. They may just travel that particular period of time, and they may disperse once they reach the destination. So that the kind of processes are called independent process. And between independent processes, we don't have to bother about inter-process communication, because they are unlikely to communicate. They will just keep quiet and get themselves executed. The next category of process are called cooperating processes. These are processes which are somehow related, and they may also have to interact, share, pass some message, communicate. So there is a need for communication that is there among the cooperating processes. This is like people on a family trip. So when they all take a bus and travel to a destination, in this case they are not independent, they are all cooperating, so they are all related, and they will definitely communicate, they will talk with each other, they will share something with each other. So that is cooperating processes. That is where we are going to be focusing on inter-process communication. So cooperating processes can be affected or affect other processes, including they may have to share data. For example, one process may be expecting an argument from another process to complete its execution, or the output of one process may become the input of another process. So they have to exchange. So a lot of examples are there for suggesting that cooperating processes are actually widely existing. So these are the various reasons for cooperating processes to be created. They may want to share information, like there is a shared file. We used to write program where one program will open the file and write something into that, and another program will open the same file and will read the data that was written by the first process. So they may be sharing a file like this. Next is computation speed up, divide and conquer. So even if you take a simple quicksort algorithm, it's much efficient if you divide the list into several small lists and let them get sorted separately. Finally we can combine them. So break the task into subtasks is a common strategy, and in that case also the cooperating processes are there. Modularity is dividing the system functions into separate processes and implementing them, so that if any mistake happens in one of the modules, it can be rectified without changing the entire code. Only the affected module, or only the module that needs to be updated, has to be dealt with. Remaining modules need not be changed in any way. Convenience. User may want to do several tasks at a time. So these are various advantages of cooperating processes. Cooperating processes have to communicate with each other, otherwise they are independent processes. If they don't communicate, we better call them as independent processes. And there are two models of IPC: shared memory based IPC and message passing based IPC. So we will explore the difference between shared memory and message passing, and the implementation of shared memory and message passing. So we will discuss all this in this lecture and in the subsequent lecture. This is the basic view of the two models. So what you can see here is that the first is a design of a message passing based communication. So here there is a message queue created. Message passing will involve creation of a message queue. It's more like a mailbox. So you have to create a common message queue where all the messages will be pushed by the respective processes, and the other process can retrieve the messages from the message queue. And in the case of shared memory, no need of any separate message queue to be created. It only requires a common memory between the two processes to be shared among them, and process A and process B will identify some memory region and agree to share that memory region as a means of their communication. So once this has been agreed, this memory has been accepted by both process. Whenever they want to communicate with the other process, they will simply write that message into this memory, which can be retrieved by the another process. So this is the way in which the communication happens in shared memory. And you can also notice that message queue, the queue is away from two processes. The queue is not part of the processes, but it is away from the processes, whereas shared memory is within the address space of the processes. So it will have its own impacts. The difference of message queues being separate from the processes and shared memory being part of the processes having their own drawbacks and advantages, which will determine the selection of the mechanism, whether message queue has to be preferred or whether shared memory has to be preferred, is going to be decided based on this particular characteristic. So we'll see few points differentiating the two techniques. In the shared memory model, a region of memory that is shared by cooperating process is established. Step 1. This is what I told you, that if two processes decide to communicate through shared memory, they first have to create a shared memory, which is nothing but a memory region within one of the processes. Whenever a process is created, they get memory allocated by the operating system, and that memory is generally having enough space for all the content. It will have space for the code, it will have space for the data, stack, heap, local variables, for arguments. For all that there will be memory space. So some portion of that memory can be agreed to be shared by the two processes, and for that we have some function for available. So once the memory is established, then processes can exchange information by reading and writing into that shared memory. So once the memory is agreed, and also the OS has acknowledged that this memory can be used for communication, then it is just a matter of normal read and write statements. So it does not require any special privilege hereafter. The processors can simply access their own memories with no support from the operating system. Whereas in the messaging model, communication takes place by means of messages exchanged between the cooperating process. So this happens in a message exchange basis. You know that message communication is a separate mode of communication. There are separate functions for that. We have send message function, we have receive primitive. So there is and also we have blocked send, non-blocked send, blocked receive, non-blocked receive. So it is a different, completely different mechanism, and it's a little more expensive than shared memory to implement. And both the we will also explore more differences as we get into the implementations. Both the models just mentioned are common in operating systems, and every operating system implements both of them. So if you go into Linux or Windows, you will find both message passing and shared memory implemented. You have the methods of methods for implementing shared memory as well as message passing in our programs. Message passing is more useful for exchanging smaller amounts of data because no conflicts need to be avoided. Message passing is also easier to implement in a distributed system. See, this is the major point to be noted, that shared memory only works if the two processes that are trying to communicate reside in the same memory of the memory region. That is, if both are running in the same system, invariably they occupy the same main memory. So their memory is they both are residing on the same main memory. So sharing memory is a simple option. But you should also consider that two processes running in different systems may still want to communicate with each other. So in that case, they don't have any shared memory. They each run on a different memory. So in that case, the only option left is message passing. So whenever processors don't share the memory, that means the main memory is not common between two processes. Their communication can only happen through message passing. But when they share the memory, they can either go for shared memory or they may go for message passing. So both options are available. But in that case, shared memory is the ideal choice. Whenever there is a provision of shared memory, message passing is not attractive. It's better to go for shared memory based implementation. The reason that shared memory should be preferred is it's faster than message passing, because with message passing every activity requires the system calls. So when you want to create message queue, you need a system call. When you want to write into the message queue, system call. Similarly, to read from message queue, that is also going to involve the OS kernel. So it has to happen only in the kernel mode. But shared memory, only the creation of the shared memory requires a system call. But once it is created, it becomes a normal part of the process, and they can just read and write without even asking any permission from the operating system. So shared memory is a inexpensive and fast, quicker option than message queue, provided there is a accessibility of shared memory. So once the shared memory is established, then all accesses are treated as routine memory accesses and no OS assistance is required. Now coming to multi-core systems, multi-core systems are slightly different. They are neither multi-processor systems nor uniprocessor systems. They are in between. Multi-processor systems are systems which are having a separate CPU and they are physically separated. Whereas uniprocessor systems are one CPU and one main memory. But multiprocessor core systems are the single CPU is further divided into a number of smaller CPUs. So in such systems, there is a which one do you should we prefer, whether it is shared memory or message, because what we discussed is applicable in a uniprocessor system or in a distributed system. Now this is a different situation. So recent research on multi-core systems has indicated that message passing is providing better performance than shared memory on such systems. Shared memory also suffers from cache coherency. That is another issue, because when the each CPU has their own cache memories, the cache coherency will become an issue. So that is a different. It's a problem where the content of the cache memory available in one CPU is not available in some other CPU. So that leads to a poor performance, which is referred as cache coherency issue, that is found to be prevalent in the case of shared memory based implementation, but it is not there in the case of message queue. Now we are going to focus on the implementation of shared memory systems. So typically a shared memory region resides in the address space of the process, creating the shared memory. So we have two processes and they have to first create a shared memory. How this is done is that generally the one who initiates the communication will create the shared memory within its own address space. So it will give permission to the second process to access its own memory region, which will act as a shared memory. And the other processes that wish to communicate using the shared memory must attach to their address space. When I explain you the program, you will see what are the functions used for each of these steps. We have function for creating the shared memory. We have function for a process to attach to the shared memory. Once attached, they can read and write. Normally the OS tries to one thing you have to note down here is that, see, normally a process is never allowed to access the memory region of another process. It's a memory violation, boundary violation, and the process will be immediately punished for that. Termination. The process will be terminated. But in this particular case, the operating system has to permit a process to access the address space of another process, because they have to share the address space. So the OS will give special permission for this to happen, and the shared memory can be created and shared. So they can exchange information by reading and writing data in the shared areas. The processes are also responsible for ensuring that they are not writing the okay. So this is a requirement that needs to be taken care while we implement the shared memory based communication. So the problem is that when two processes share the same memory, uh, both may want to communicate something to the other process at the same time. For example, process A and process B are sharing a memory and they have created a shared memory. And now if the communication happens in such a way that only A writes into the memory and B only reads the memory, then there is no conflict going to occur. So that is going to be normal. But if both may try to read and write at the same time, that is going to lead to a synchronization problem. In fact, even in my first example, there is a potential conflict that when both one process is writing into the memory, and if another process tries to read from the same memory without realizing that the memory is currently already being used by the first process, it is still going to be a synchronization failure and it could lead to uncertain outcome. I think I can give you a small example to understand this particular problem, though we will be discussing this problem later under a separate topic on concurrency. The simple example you can remember for the moment is that we all know that the lightning deals are conducted in Amazon. Okay, so what happens is that they will give a particular time at which the customers have to click on add cart so that they can make the purchase that particular mobile phone. So what would happen at 12 p.m. Exactly is that everybody will be looking at their monitors, and at 12 p.m. they will get to see the add cart button, but when they press the button, most of them will see that the mobile doesn't get added to their cart. Even though they were able to press the add cart button, mobiles are not added. Normally, this is not at all the case. Whenever you see an item available and add cart is visible, you can definitely get the item added into the cart. But doesn't happen always during the lightning deal. That is because when you see the add cart button, millions of others are also seeing the same and they are also pressing the button exactly at the same time. Remember, even if there is a delay of gap of half a second, the first customer will get the mobile, second person will be denied. But here what happens is exactly at the same time millions of people are clicking the add cart button, so it is going to be uncertain. The problem here is that we won't know whether we are getting the mobile or not until we are finally able to see the cart. So it is uncertain. We are used to that uncertainty, but not computers. So when you write applications, an activity should either happen or it should not happen. It should not be based on any luck. Who will get and who will miss, that should not happen based on any luck or the situation. It should happen based on a clear, predictable principle. So we have to enforce some synchronization mechanism to clearly define who should be accessing the shared buffer at a given point of time. There should not be a competition between them. To understand the problem of the role of concurrency, we will take a small example called the producer-consumer problem. It is a classic problem of concurrency. So a producer is a process whose task is to generate data or produce data and to put it into a common buffer. Consumer is a similar process whose responsibility is or job is simply retrieving and consuming the data. So you can see that they complement each other. It's only when the consumer consumes, producer is able to put the data into the buffer. Otherwise the buffer will get filled and producer cannot add data after that. Similarly, the consumer can consume only if the producer puts data into the buffer. Otherwise it will remain an empty buffer and no consumption can happen. So indirectly they communicate with each other. For that we have to create a shared memory. So the shared memory can act as the buffer between producer and consumer, and they can share the data through that. The example to understand the real-time application of this producer consumer problem is a compiler may produce assembly code that is consumed by a assembler. The producer consumer problem also provides a useful metaphor for the client server paradigm. We can also visualize the producer consumer problem as a case of client server problem. So who is client here? Consumer must be the client, producer must be the server. So one who produces and feeds the other process is a producer, and the one that makes use of or receives the information data from the other process is the consumer. So one solution to the producer consumer problem is with the help of shared memory, but we can also implement the solution using message passing also. To allow a producer and consumer process to run concurrently, we must have available of a buffer of items that can be produced by the producer and emptied by the consumer. This buffer will reside in the region of memory that is shared by producer and consumer. So we are going for the shared memory. A producer can produce one item while the consumer is consuming another item. As I told you, this must be clearly synchronized so that when producer is putting data into the buffer, it's not disturbed by or it is not interfered by the consumer. Similarly, if the consumer is currently consuming the data from the buffer, we must keep away the producer for some time. Now the bounded buffer and unbounded buffer implementations. The producer consumer problem can be implemented in two varieties. One is we can assume that the buffer size is infinite, which means it's a kind of linked list. So whenever new data is added, it will keep expanding, and whenever data is consumed, it will keep reducing. So that is a simple way of implementing the problem. Another is bounded buffer, which means an array is used as a buffer. So which means if we only have limited space, if the space is full, then we can't allow the producer to add data. But if the array is empty, then we can't allow the consumer to consume data. This is the declaration of the shared memory based implementation of bounded buffer. So we are creating a buffer of a particular size. In this example, the size is said to be 10. The shared buffer is implemented as a circular array. So it's basically a queue. Actually what we are implementing is a queue having the front and rear. So you can insert only at one end, which is the rear, and you can remove at the other end, front. But to make it efficient, we are going to implement this as a circular queue. So circular queue means that if we keep reducing or consuming the data, the pointer, the front pointer will reach the end of the queue, and after that if you want to put more data, then we have to reposition the rear to the front. So that for that we will be using the typical circular queue logic. I'll show you the logic. Okay, this is the one when the buffer is empty when in equal to out. So how do you know whether the buffer is empty or not? If in equal to out, that means which is equal to front equal to rear, then the buffer is empty. Whereas if in plus 1 modular division by buffer size equal to out, then it is full. This is the exact logic you would have seen in the circular queue implementation. That's what we are also doing here. So this is the code for the producer. So it will keep producing data, but before adding the data into the buffer, it will check whether there is space left. So for the producer, the concern is whether it has some space. If there is no space left, then you can see that there is a semicolon at the end of the while loop, which will cause the process to keep running the same loop, which is called a do nothing loop. This kind of a loop which simply keeps the process to wait for a long time is called as a do nothing loop. So this process will get stuck here. Whereas if there is space, then the loop will terminate and the producer will come to this line. New data is put into the buffer and it increments the buffer size. In fact, it increments the modifies the size of in, because in has to be referred by the consumer to know whether there is data in the buffer or not. So accordingly, the in is updated by the producer. One issue this illustration does not address is, what if both producer and consumer attempt to access the buffer at the same time? I already told you that there is a potential conflict possible between producer and consumer when both try to access the buffer at the same time. What is going to happen and at that particular point of time is unpredictable. So we have to take care of that. We will do it through some synchronization technique that will be discussed later under the synchronization topic. So this is the basic idea of about the IPC. IPC is yet to be completed. We have just completed the first part of it. What we have understood from the first part is that what is the need of IPC, and what are the methods of IPC, and what are the how the two methods of shared memory and message passing differ, and when you should go for shared memory and when you should go for message queue, and how shared memory can be implemented to solve the problem of producer consumer. So in the next video lecture, I will show you an actual implementation, a full implementation of a program on shared memory, which will make you to understand the problem and the solution using shared memory in a much better way. Thank you.